This might surprise some folks who are not 100% club members. George Karl has actually been on the Carolina Insider podcast before. I will say it was a little depressing that I looked it up and it was almost 10 years ago. It,
Wow.
it was back in January of 2017. We talked to him on an old-fashioned device called a telephone. So, Coach Karl, we appreciate you coming back around and being with us again.
Well, I'm a Carolina guy all the way.
That is what we have always loved about you. You're a Carolina guy, so with this weekend coming up, Carolina and Duke at the Smith Center, we got to ask you first your favorite Carolina Duke memories and what you think about when you think about Carolina Duke.
The one memory I have about Carolina Duke was I think it was my sophomore year. We played Duke 4 times,
Wow.
played them in the Big Four, and beat them my first time. Played two in the season. I think we won both those games. And then we played in the semifinals of the NIT final
Hmm.
in New York City, and I know we beat them that night. And my memories a lot go to Western Pennsylvania with Denny Weissig, Steve Previs, and myself, and Dick DeVenzio at Duke. And Dick DeVenzio is the reason I went to North Carolina. Because when I asked him, where should I go when I had North Carolina and Duke on the table, he said to me the biggest mistake he ever made was not going to North Carolina.
Wow.
So not many people know that. I actually was convinced to go to North Carolina by a Dookie.
They did something good, coach. That's good to hear that something positive came out of
Yeah.
it. Well, we know that there's something positive coming up with on Amazon Prime, Soul Power, the legend of the American Basketball Association, the ABA. Coach, you had a big part in this documentary. Tell us a little bit about it, why it was something that you wanted to have happen.
Well, it all started with COVID. When COVID hit, I started watching old playoff games, and I watched some ABA stuff. I did a podcast with Julius on ABA basketball, and we had so much fun talking about the stories and about the time that we were in. And actually, the time of COVID and Trump, the first time around, was going on. Our country got into a little bit of crazy. And what I remember about the 70s, early 70s, and my time in North Carolina was how I felt a little bit about, the black white thing was on our map. The Vietnam War was on our map. Change was on our map. And I felt the same way around COVID. The world was shaking a little bit. And out of nowhere, a team kind of got together on the ABA and thought it had to be a story that should be told. Um, just because of the podcast and Julius, and in Denver, there's a little bit of an ABA fraternity with Chucky Williams and Ralph Simpson. And we get together about once a month together and talk ABA. And the team came together in a way that this movie made itself in a lot of ways. I believe I was kind of the coach or the captain of the ship. It was my idea, my thought, my desire. And every day I got more involved with it. I came up with this story had to be told. No matter what, the story of the ABA was not being told. And that the way the game is now being played was created in many, many ways because of the ABA.
What are some of those ways that the ABA helped create the game that we're watching today?
Well, I think the one thing that I want to stand on is the 70s was right after the civil rights movement was big, and there was the integration of basketball. You know, everybody said North Carolina was integrated. I think we had 2 blacks, maybe 3 blacks on our team. I thought the merger between the ABA and the NBA kind of dispelled the myth that the black player could not play organized basketball. And I think the ABA merger sped up the integration of basketball because in one season, almost 30 African American players joined the NBA. I mean, we can talk about the bias and why the NBA was not totally committed to the black athlete as much as the ABA was. The ABA opened up the window, gave the opportunity to the black athlete at Grambling or North Carolina A&T or all the black schools that were kind of, you know, they were segregated against. So the one thing I think, the big thing for me was the athleticism of the black athlete got a stage that showed the basketball world that they were really important to the basketball world. And I think that's osmosis into a good story. You got the 3-point shot, which now a lot of people are saying is hurting the game. But the 3-point shots started in the ABA. The dunk contest started in the ABA. Cheerleaders in pro games started in the ABA. The All-Star game, dunk contest, 3-point shooting contest, all that was kind of the guy that started a lot was Karl, who started at Carolina, at the Carolina Cougars a long time ago. So, and then when I was watching all these films, I thought the ABA was as good or better than the NBA. But no one recognized that in the 70s. And today, I think the story needs to be told that there's a lot of ABA in today's NBA.
Coach, you said there's kind of a ABA fraternity or in the Denver area, and through the years, when Adam and I have spoken to anyone who was associated with the ABA, that includes Larry Brown, that we spoke to Coach Brown recently about it. Everybody who was involved seems to speak so positively and seems to have those type of feelings that would create a fraternity now 40, 50 years later. What was it? What was it about that moment in time, that grouping, whatever, that still resonates with you guys all these years later?
Well, we were kind of labeled the Rebel League, the league that was, playing with a red, white, and blue ball. And the NBA had a way of saying nasty things about us. You know, but, in general, it just opened up the game of basketball to more players having the ability to get paid in America and stay in America. And then I think it opened up coaching a little bit. I think more college coaches kind of wanted to coach the best players, and they got more into the NBA. I just think it came at a time in our country that sport was searching for a better direction, and it was more competitive. You had the AFL and the NFL. You had the USFL. There were a lot of entrepreneur mentality going on that basketball at that time, a lot of people didn't want to go to Dallas, Texas, or Atlanta, Georgia, or Birmingham, Alabama, or New Orleans. The NBA and a lot of pro sports was an East Coast, West Coast, Midwest thing. It was not a South thing. And I think that the ABA kind of showed that it could work in Louisville, Kentucky. It could work in San Antonio, Texas. It could work in Indianapolis. A lot of small markets made it work because of the ABA gave it a chance.
Coach, you rattled off several things there that weren't happening in the NBA, but that the ABA brought into our lives, and now today they all seem fundamental. Like, of course, we had all these things, but back when you were playing in the ABA, these things were brand new. What were some of the biggest culture shocks that you remember about going to play for these bunch of outlaws who were setting up this new thing?
Well, the biggest difference I saw in the ABA NBA when I was playing in it was the speed of the game. Fortunately, going to North Carolina, we played really, really fast. But in general, the American brand of basketball was a lot slower and more possession oriented in the 70s and 80s. But in the ABA, with the 3-point shot, the speed of the black athlete into the game, the length and athleticism of the players that we got in the ABA just showed the basketball world that you can play fast. And so I think that comes to my mind that the ABA game was a very fast-paced game. The 3-point shot made it more fast-paced and more exciting. And then our players were, you know, we had some great players that no one knew about. I mean, guys like Jimmy Jones, Willie Wise, George Gervin, Spencer Haywood, Connie Hawkins, Doug Moe, Larry Brown. They weren't in the NBA. They got in. They played in the ABA, and they're Hall of Fame guys now that started their career in the ABA. And if the ABA didn't exist, they might never had the opportunity.
Again, this docuseries is on Amazon Prime. It's going to be available starting on February 12th, exclusively on Prime Video. Again, it is Soul Power, the legend of the American Basketball Association, the ABA. Really encourage you to check it out when you can. Coach, we can't talk with you without at least asking one or two more Carolina questions as well. I'd just be interested now in 2026, what role Carolina has played in your life and what you think about your time in Chapel Hill.
Well, that's simple. It's the foundation of my career. I mean, I've been asked the question, "What's the best decision you ever made?" And I've said it. Unfortunately, I said it in front of my first wife, and I mean, I said the best decision I ever made was choosing to go to North Carolina and being under the mentorship of Dean Smith, Bill Guthridge, John Loss, Eddie Fogler, Roy Williams. So many great influencers on my life go back to Chapel Hill. And I still live. I mean, I don't know, I don't want to diminish the honor of being selected to the Naismith Hall of Fame. The most meaningful part of that is my name now hangs in the Dean Dome in the Dean Dome in Chapel Hill. I mean, that's as important to me as Naismith's Hall of Fame. And as I said, the foundation of my basketball life. And when I coached, I don't know if a day didn't go by that I didn't have a North Carolina story or a North Carolina friend and in some way or fashion touch my basketball life.
We're now 30 years on almost from Dean Smith's last time coaching a basketball game. When you watch basketball today, what imprint of Dean Smith do you still see in the game today, even those 30 years later?
Well, what I loved about Coach Smith is he made basketball, I think, basketball history because he took chances. You know, but more than anything, when you played in North Carolina, the game of basketball was a we game and not a me game. And that was sold from the first day you walked in to this day today. I think the Carolina way is it's a team game. And five guys playing connected and together are more powerful than five talented guys not playing together. And I think in today's game, I like the coaches that are very innovative and that are taking chances. But I don't think anybody back then ever thought it would be the great game it is today. And to be a part of the ride of basketball blowing up, not only in America, but internationally, to probably being the second most popular sport. And if there's a Mount Rushmore of basketball, I think Coach Smith has got to be on that mountain.